Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I have got the iPhone because I got Samurai Jack 1 and 2, and I am disgusted by this. Oh, man. Oh, and I knew this was a hot trash cover when I picked it up, but I love the character of Samurai Jack so much. It's hard to say between him and Spider-Man who has had more of an impact on me, but I do think that even though the character of Peter Parker may have inspired me more than Samurai Jack, I know that the action of Samurai Jack pretty much created or helped to create what my imagination was for years. When I would make up stories in my head, they would have the tone and flavor and the fight scenes of a Samurai Jack episode. So I love this character. I've read most of the comics run that came before this. I don't know if I read it all or read most of it. I know I read the one where they came up with their own ending before the fifth season was created after 10 years. So if you don't know anything about this franchise, it does have a cult following. It was kind of a Cartoon Network hit, but I highly recommend it for thinking about art, thinking about action, thinking about pure kind of righteous characters with lots of heroism. There's a reason that cartoon got a cult following, and I love that cartoon so much that I'm willing to read something with this character and read every bad comic about this character because I love this character. And I'm still gonna spend my money on this stuff, even though I'm so ugh, by it. But I need to see this through because I want to see what they're doing with this character because I want to see this character be like Batman, be like Superman, be like Spider-Man. So one thing I'm thinking about is how these iconic characters, they started out as one thing and then 70 years go by, 80 years go by, and there's still this, core basic identity of the character. Superman, he works at the Daily Planet. He loves Lois Lane. His best buddy is Jimmy Olsen. Ma and Pa Kent found him as a baby, but he's had all these different interpretations, all these different artists, all these different writers. How does that happen to you? Are we kind of at the point Zach's made this point where we might just be at the end of of comics as a medium. This is just the long, slow death from here on. And the thing I'm thinking about is one-dimensional characters, two-dimensional characters, and three-dimensional characters. A long time ago, maybe my third video or so, I talked about Charles Dickens writing one-dimensional characters, where the whole point of the characters, they have some sort of goofy mannerism or goofy way of speaking, and that makes them so memorable. They'll have ridiculous names like, Mr. Cheerable, Mr. Macabre, right? They create a strong impression in your mind versus a three-dimensional character where they're kind of fleshed out and multi-dimensional. And, well, which kind of character do you want to write? Because the three-dimensional characters aren't necessarily better than the strong one-dimensional characters. Popeye the Sailor is a strong one-dimensional character who gained decades of animated shows, comics, based on what a strong impression he created in the reader. And I think that's something that a lot of the old superheroes had that is not true of kind of modern superheroes because they're trying to tell mini movies. They're trying to give. It's good. Their ambitions are higher. Their ambitions are to kind of tell these complex stories with depth and emotion, and the character changes over time. They're not just a goofy little guy in a mask. But the consequence of that is that we don't have these really strong, really impactful, simple ideas. We've lost simplicity. Dang it. Oh, so many tangents. But one of the comics that made me stop wanting to read superhero comics forever was some Green Arrow comic where he had died and they brought him back. I thought of it because they joked about Jason Todd being dead in that comic and how they were never going to bring back Jason Todd. But I hated that Green Arrow comic so much because it just lambasted old Golden Age Green Arrow comics where he had the boxing glove arrow. But it was so ugly. There was some creepy priest guy hurting kids, and he got chewed up by a monster, and there was all this weird, monsters from hell, interdimensional stuff. And the reason I hated it is it was kind of being cynical about goofy old golden age superhero stories, but it wasn't telling its own story. It was confusing being cynical with having depth. making fun of goofy old superheroes is not the same as telling a good story in your own right. And what I love about the character of Samurai Jack is he is a pure hero. His weakness is that he is too sympathetic with people, and he will sometimes lose sight of his bigger goals in the name of helping people that he doesn't want to see hurt or leave behind. This is a character who I think, I'd be satisfied if the show was the last word on the character and that show just lasted forever and that was all there was in the character. But this is a character who could potentially 60 years from now be constantly being reinvented and having new artists and new writers have great ideas for this character. But what's being produced for this character after the kind of amazing return of the character to television after 10 years, people were so surprised by that. 10 years go by and they're finally going to come back and finish his story. Wow, but then we're getting this hot trash. And I'm sad. But I'm still in it. I'm still in it because I do believe this character can be the basis for a whole series of comics that are great. Okay, I've been looking at the cover. Let's dig into it. So a while ago I heard Zach say he hates videos that try to talk about multiple comics because you can't do them justice, and I took that to heart for a while because that used to be one of my old approaches, but I think I have to do that with this because this is so trash that I could sum up the story of this in 30 seconds and that'd be the video. Both of these this wouldn't even be a scene in an episode. They would like do what I know already what the next 4 issues are going to be, and the first 6 issues of this comic would be maybe the first minute of the show. And I think about pacing a lot. Okay, so let's just crack this one open. So elephant in the room, Warwick Johnson Cadwell has a kind of rough, jankety cartoon style, and there is an argument that could be made for why you'd want this kind of a jankety cartoon style, and that's the cartoon itself had kind of a weird edge to it. The characters were drawn without lines, especially in the early episodes. Sometimes Jack would just not look that good. Some of the enemies would just be weird, goofy kind of characters, right? So the thinking could be, well, it's kind of an edgy, unusual cult show with really experimental art styles in it. So let's get kind of an experimental type to fit with that. But my argument against Warwick Johnson Cadwell's style is that ultimately the style of the cartoon Samurai Jack ends up being appealing even when they're doing jankety weird stuff with it because they are emphasizing simple shape. That whole generation of Cartoon Network shows was about producing animation cheaply, and they worked smartly within those parameters. So Hanna-Barbera would create cheap animation by using the same assets over and over. Scooby-Doo walking down the hallway, and they could just reuse that over and over and over again. The 90s era Cartoon Network shows got around the problem by simplifying everything down to very basic, very understandable shapes. And Samurai Jack in particular, because of their artistic choices of eliminating black line, even though it's kind of a jankety, 90, not 90s, but it was an early 2000s show that tonally fit with the 90s cartoon shows because similar people were working on it. Samurai Jack felt classy because of the pacing of the stories, the way they treated their audience and respected their audience's time and intelligence, and the total look of the show. Every episode having kind of a unified feel to it, but then amongst episodes there'd be lots of variety. There'd be a zombie episode, there'd be a ghost story episode, there'd be a crazy gladiator battle episode. So yeah, you could have. So I'm going to say this for Warwick Johnson Cadwell, because when I show you examples of the art, some of it I'm just going to say looks hideous. But I could imagine Warwick Johnson Cadwell illustrating a Samurai Jack book if it was just a very certain kind of episode. Like if it was the episode when Samurai Jack went into Alice in Wonderland and there was a lot of goofy humor, I think his style would fit for that kind of thing. If it was the episode where Jack went inside the farting dragon and it's just, tee-hee, it's so silly, we're going to do a silly episode, then I think Warwick Johnson Cadwell's style would fit with that tone. But his art does not fit with the tone of a character like Samurai Jack, who is a pure and simple shape. And this may not be a problem that I don't know if it's possible to do a good comic that really captures the spirit of the show with Samurai Jack, because the show doesn't have line. He's such a pure, simple shape. His head's a big rectangle, essentially, that's a little bit narrow at the bottom than at the top. I don't know if you can do a comic, even if you are an excellent artist, which captures fully what that cartoon is about, because I think that was a story that was made for cartoons that worked best as a cartoon, which may not you could never adapt that into live action and have the punch and the wham that cartoon had, even if it was an excellent movie. So I don't know, maybe that's one of the things I'm thinking about is, if I was asked to do this, could I even adapt what I love about that cartoon into a comic? I don't know, but there are weaknesses in Warwick Johnson Cadwell's style that make me cringe about what I'm getting into. So, but I'm not going to throw too much shade on him. So for Fabian Rangel Jr., I don't know who's giving the direction on the broad strokes of the story, but this is a Shaggy Dog story with different dimensions of Samurai Jack. They're all going to meet up and have an adventure together, and it is paced slowly. Oh. And I already know what this is going to be, because this is the one about the motorcycle guy, and then issue 2 is about this Luchador Jack guy. 4 more issues of this with Space Jack and RoboCop Jack and whatever, maybe Pirate Jack or Billionaire Jack or whatever, and they're all going to be the same, because these two were the same. Punch, wham. Even the show, sometimes they'd start out slow, and it'd be like, crickets, and there'd be rain patter, So it's not just that fast is good and slow is bad. It's what you do with your time. If you have a slow start, let it build, and then wham, 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 slap. Swords are flying. It's the contrast. Slow, slow, slow. Boom. Million sword strikes in the air. It's incredible. Oh, go watch that show. I gave up. I almost gave up halfway through this one and just kept thinking, I want to watch the show. I want to watch the show. I want to watch the show. All right. So pretty much the story of this could be summarized as, there is a motorcycle gang version of Jack. He's tough, and he beats up a giant fat lady, I guess. We know he's Jack because we see the eye shot here. That's what looks like the end titles from the show. But you wouldn't really have much clue from the drawing style that this is supposed to be Jack, because it's so jankety compared to the stylishness of that show. Okay, if this were kind of a goofy Alice in Wonderland thing, and I was going, tee-hee, Samurai Jack's in Wonderland, it's so silly, but this is supposed to be a dramatic scene. I'm not doing a bit. Oh, man. I spent my money on this. Okay, and then the pacing of this. So, motorcycle gang Jack shows up to deliver the kid, and then he just says no. And then they immediately understand that he's betraying them. Like, they don't ask, oh, what is it, boss? Or are we going to ask him for more money? Oh, it's poorly communicated. And then he beats a bunch of them up. Go read Cage! Drawn by Genndy Tartakovsky. He actually does have a rough style. I am kind of a Genndy Tartakovsky fanboy, but I won't ignore how rough his drawing style is. But if you watch his animation and you love his animation, I think it gets better, because you see in his drawing style how much he's thinking about motion and shape. And loving listen to Genndy Tartakovsky talk about animation. Listen to what he talked about when he was trying to do the Popeye movie. Listen to him talk about Hotel Transylvania. Genndy Tartakovsky is this guy whose love of the medium of animation is infectious, and you see it in his work. So even when he's rough, you see the love. You see it in every little character, in every little panel. You can tell he's just loving this. And this is aping kind of Genndy Tartakovsky's. Well, and that's the thing. It's not like Genndy Tartakovsky waved a magic wand and Samurai Jack appeared. There were tons of artists. There were tons of creative people building that show and adding ideas onto the table. So the magic of Samurai Jack was the sheer variety and the types of enemies and fights. And, we get, doofy white robots that, looks like something that might have been in the show. There might have been an episode where Samurai Jack joined a motorcycle gang, but it would have been Samurai Jack. It wouldn't have been weird alternate dimension, not Samurai Jack with a pretty boy mustache. And then it ends with the alien boy popping up and motorcycle Samurai Jack gets teleported. And I know exactly what's happening. They're all going to be teleported to real Samurai Jack and go on an adventure. So this is the same pacing of the story. It's Samurai Jack as a luchador. He gets hit in the head and he has a vision of the real Samurai Jack. And then it ends with him poofing away. And we're going to have 4 more issues of that exact same story before the team is even assembled. What's so painful about this is the universe of Samurai Jack, as it was, maybe they ripped off Frank Miller's Rodin. I haven't read that yet. I want to, just to see how it influenced Samurai Jack, but I wouldn't call Samurai Jack a ripoff of Frank Miller. I'd call it a love letter to Frank Miller and all kinds of other, popular media. Conan the Barbarian, they'll talk about. Old samurai movies, Zatoichi maybe, goofy old kung fu movies. It is that show is Genndy Tartakovsky's love letter to the action stories of his youth. And then it creates a new generation of people who love those kinds of action stories and builds a cult. I've even heard girls really dig Samurai Jack. Maybe they just dig all those scenes where he's getting stripped down to his Japanese undies in those life or death fights. But man, this is a universal character you can love no matter who you are or where you're from. What are they doing with him? What do you want to do with the character of Samurai Jack? Okay, some of this actually works a little better because, it's like a big crowd of, ugly aliens and monsters and stuff. So here's where, Warwick Johnson Cadwell's kind of jankety drawing style fits a little bit better, but it still doesn't work on Jack himself because we've got the Shaggy Dog story of, well, what if Jack was a luchador? Well, then Jack would be a luchador. And he gets hit in the head and he sees the vision and more monsters show up. I don't remember what made me cringe in this one. Every one of these I have a little bit of a cringe fest based on how the character is treated because he doesn't look appealing. Cartoonists need to care about appeal, even if you have a jankety style or even if you're deliberately going for kind of an edgy jankety style. I still need to want to look at it. So that can be hard when we're talking about kind of ugly drawing or grungy drawing, where the whole point is it's not pretty and stylish like Mickey Mouse. But I think the secret to it is loving your craft and caring about it enough that even if you're jankety, it feels right. It feels jankety in a way that I say, yeah, I want to look at it and I want to come back and look at it some more and some more. And I'll see hints of that. This little group of aliens, that feels something like it could be a scene from Samurai Jack, but I think the key is Samurai Jack himself, or these alternate universe versions of Samurai Jack, are so unappealing to look at, and as a heroic, idealistic character, the tone of the drawing needs to match the tone of the character, the tone of the series that we've loved, that you're presuming we're fans of this when we pick this up, and the tone of the story you're trying to tell. And Jack is a heroic character who needs to be handsome. He needs to be a knockout. Guys want to be him. Girls want to be with him. All right? We're not there yet. Oh, this one. Oh, man. Oh, what did I spend my money? Okay, this was the point where I just stopped reading. And I just started thinking about my favorite Samurai Jack episodes and even some of the old comics I kind of dug. They've always had some grunginess to the Samurai Jack comics, so I don't want to throw too much shade on Cadwell, but I've seen artists who, even if you can't capture exactly what that TV show was, you may not want to, you can at least capture the spirit of the beauty of that show and the dynamic pacing of that show. And I don't know if it's even possible for a better artist to make this dull script work. Maybe if the art was paced a little better or the story was paced a little better, this could work as just kind of an interesting bit or an interesting setup. But I'm not digging the setup of the story. I'm not digging the slow pacing. I'm not digging the jankety art. Just, oh man, what am I getting into? I am still gonna buy these. I know exactly what these 4 issues are gonna be, but I'm gonna buy all of them because I love this character and I am invested in this character. And that is a testament to how much I love this character, because when I roasted Squirrel Girl, the only reason I roasted that issue of Squirrel Girl is because it was about zines, and I've had a long time being in zine fests and zine cultures, and I knew a lot of the zine artists from that. That was the only time I bought a comic knowing I am going to hate this. I knew from the cover of this that I wasn't expecting that much going into it, and it got worse and worse. But I love this character so much that I want to see what's going on with the character, even if I know it's trash and I know this is a low point. This should be a high point for the character. This should either be a point where he's kind of like a Wile E. Coyote character. The appeal of the character was he's trying to go back to the past, but if he ever gets to go back to the past, that's the end of the show. You almost root for Wile E. Coyote to catch the Roadrunner, but if Wile E. Coyote catches the Roadrunner, that's the end of the show. That's why they had to take a 10-year break, because how do you end a show like that? And you could set stories in the universe of Samurai Jack, because, who cares about continuity? Who cares if you tell a story about him going to a village with some weird, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be like robot Aztecs, right? And, open it, capture that feel of, open it with the sun blazing on Jack's neck or something. And then, my point is, who cares where it fits in the continuity of the TV show? We'd be invested because the world of Samurai Jack is a world that's ripe for telling weird and interesting stories about a samurai visiting a strange and exotic village where there's some unique combination of futuristic stuff and ancient stuff. You could always make that work for infinity, maybe. If as long as you've got creative, artistic people and writers contributing ideas, the setting of Samurai Jack is a rich world of possibilities where anything you imagine could happen in the world of Samurai Jack. You could reinvent the character entirely and say, okay, we love the show, but we're going to throw that out and establish our own continuity. That's fine, but don't give me 8 issues of a what if story that's not compellingly paced. I don't know. Oh, I'm so upset. Go watch Samurai Jack, guys, and go read Cage! by Jendi Tartakovsky. That is your homework for seeing a person who has a lot of passion for good storytelling. Number 1 Marmaduke.